What's going on, boys? What is going on? Today I wanted to bring you a different style video. A lot of the popular videos I have on the channel are either lists, top 10s, or things that are essentially presented to you in a list format. And I have this idea to present you with 5 of the most used things or places in emergency response Liberty County, along with the 5 things that you likely don't use or have ever used, or I don't see people using or going to in ERLC as well. So join me for this list because I think you guys are going to enjoy it, and I also want to hear your thoughts and comments down below. So starting off with the 5 things you likely don't use or places you don't go to is coming in at number 1, the radar gun. I tried making a video out of this, but truth be told, it was incredibly hard. As I've played in the public servers and even in some of the private servers, I can't say that I've ever seen a big percentage of people using the radar gun. That's why this makes my list as number 1. Sticking in the police team with number 2, I rarely see people use the stop stick. For those of you that don't know, the stop stick can be strategically used to stop wanted criminals when they're in their car. Just simply put it on the road somewhere or anywhere where you think they may travel over, and bam, their tires will be shredded. And just like that, you'll be able to move in to make the arrest. I really have only seen the stop stick be used in private servers, especially in Border RP, but outside of that, I honestly can't remember the last time I saw a police officer try to use the stop stick for anything. Moving on to some of the places that I rarely see used in emergency response Liberty County is the caves. I don't know if that's because people don't know about them, or maybe because I'm not seeing it, because after all, it is the caves, but every single time I've gone into the caves, I've never ran into anybody else. They're empty, they're vacant, they're abandoned, and I don't know why. It's one of my favorite places in ERLC, and if you ever find yourself being wanted and you run into the caves, I promise you there is a high probability that you are going to lose the cops in here. Moreover, if they're not on your tail and you run into the caves, I promise you, they're probably not going to think to look in the caves. With all of that out of the way, I'm also going to say that the caves is a vastly underused network system in ERLC that I would like to see more players use. But nevertheless, it still makes my list as one of the places that you likely do not use in ERLC. Continuing with some of the places that you also probably don't use that often in ERLC is the houses. I've always been a fan of the fact that you can rent some of the houses in ERLC. Granted, I do have a love-hate relationship with the time and the amount of money that it costs to actually rent the house, but in either case, oftentimes when I've traveled the private and public servers, I very rarely see any players actually take advantage of this. To inject private servers into the picture one more time, that really is the only time I've seen houses be used consistently. I remember one time I was playing in a SWAT raid RP server, and really that's the only time I've seen the houses used to their full potential. But outside of that, let me know in the comments below if you're one that logs in and immediately goes out to rent a house. I think I can accredit that to the fact that it's so darn expensive to rent out a house. And number 5, one of the jobs that I rarely see being used in ERLC is a street sweeper. I feel like I only saw this at the very beginning when the update first rolled out, but now when you venture around ERLC, whether it's in a private or public server, I don't think I've ever ran into anyone being a street sweeper. Maybe once, maybe twice over the past year, maybe year and some months that the update has been out. Let me know in the comments below if you use a street sweeper job, because I know I rarely ran into anyone doing this job. Some honorable mentions for you guys here is the mailman. Another update that I feel was a little bit more popular when the update first came out, but outside of that, I can't say I've ever seen anyone be a mailman in ERLC. Speaking of the summer update, I'm also going to throw in another honorable mention here, and that's the gas tanker. I recently ran into someone in a private server driving around a gas tanker, and that's when I thought to myself, oh yeah, I forgot we got that update as well. And that's because I just don't see it in Liberty County. And this goes back to my original idea. If the jobs were a little bit more interactive and you got a little bit more out of them, I do believe they would be used a lot more often. And the final honorable mention here is the bunker, you guys. How many of us forgot the bunker ever since it was relocated? Let alone how many of us actually know about the bunker? Let me know in the comments below if you even knew about it up to this point. For those of you that don't know, the bunker was once located in what I like to call the the lake picnic area outside of ERLC, and now it's been moved behind and to the back of the housing track right here. I feel like the bunker maybe lost some of its popularity after the update, because I do remember seeing a lot more players gathering in there, meeting in there, and going toward the bunker to try to get away from police officers, and unfortunately that's just something I don't see anymore. But anyway, let's move on to the 5 most used things in ERLC. These are the things that without fail I can log into a private or public server, and I guarantee you there will be someone using these items or someone at these locations. And let's begin with number 1, the traffic cones. Oh my goodness, I do not think there is an accessory or tool out there that is used more than the traffic cones. I see the traffic cones randomly throughout ERLC. I see the traffic cones in private servers, in the border RP servers. Whenever there's a crime, whenever there's a disabled vehicle, it doesn't matter. I see the traffic cones so much that I promise you they are probably the most used tool in ERLC. And don't forget that these can be used both in the law enforcement team and in the Department of Transportation teams. Going back to the law enforcement team, the other tool and number 2 that I assure you is highly used in Liberty County is the taser. This darn taser, you guys. How many cops openly walk around carrying their taser? Be honest, let me know in the comments below if you're one of those, because I see them all the time. I could just be standing there and all of a sudden, out of the blue, a cop is gonna approach me with his taser for absolutely no reason. Not to mention that even if you're not wanted, I promise you there's gonna be a police officer out there that's gonna try to tase you. So because of that reason, the taser makes my list as number 2. Number 3 on the 5 most used items or places in Liberty County is gonna be a 2-in-1, and that's the Lamborghini or the Bugatti. There is no shortage of players that like to speed around Liberty County in their Lamborghini or Bugatti, and you know them. You know this type of player. They like to run red lights, they like to not follow the traffic rules, they like to get away from police officers, they like to cop bait, they basically like to do everything they possibly can just to show off the fact that they have one of the fastest cars in ERLC. It is impossible for me to log into any server, even if exotics are not allowed. I promise you, you will run into someone using the Lamborghini or the Bugatti. Let me know if you agree in the comments below. One of the locations you're gonna go to without a doubt, it doesn't matter what team you're playing in, you are gonna somehow end up at the jewelry store. Correct me if I'm wrong, but something is always going down at the jewelry store. I honestly believe that this is probably the most traveled by area in all of Liberty County. Not only because this is a gathering point, but there's also 2 points of action here. The other being the jewelry store itself, and I guess we can also inject the hospital into this area. So nevertheless, this strip is highly traveled, and I promise you, no matter what server you're in, no matter what kind of RP you're doing, you're going to visit the jewelry store. And maybe I should change this from the jewelry store to just a little shopping strip, because you will end up here, I promise you that. And number 5, the most used tool in ERLC is the cuffs. You know it, boys. There's gonna be a cuff rusher out there, there's gonna be a police officer out there that's gonna try to arrest you even if you're not wanted. The cuffs are such a popular thing in ERLC because at the end of the day, it is a law enforcement game, and the only way you essentially achieve that enforcement is by arresting the bad guys, right? So the cuffs definitely make my list as number 1. I don't think there's anything else that needs to be said about them. You know it, I know it, the cuffs are overused in ERLC. Moving on to some honorable mentions in this category as well is the MDT. I feel like for the longest time the MDT was ignored, and just recently with the introduction of being able to call for air support, the MDT has grown in popularity. Not to mention that if you're doing RP in private servers, there's a very good chance that the law enforcement officers will use the MDT to cross-reference information and make sure that you are in fact wanted. So because of that, the MDT makes my list as an honorable mention. Another honorable mention for highly used items or locations are the ATMs and the RFID disruptors. I can't say there's ever been a time when I've played in the law enforcement team where an ATM was not robbed or vandalized. So because of that, it's very simple here, a 2-in-1 here as well. ATMs and RFID disruptors make my list as honorable mentions. And now that we have the update of mafias, I feel like every single time I log in, I am being invited to join somebody's mafia. But let's also not forget that for the longest time and way before the update, many of us like to drive around and form gangs or teams or mafias in order to deliver more delivery chaos to whatever server we were playing in at the time. And now that mafias are actually possible in ERLC, I think their popularity is only going to continue to grow. And don't forget that this is only a small slice of a bigger update that is coming to ERLC. So because of that, and for the time being, the Mafias only make my list as an honorable mention, but I wouldn't doubt if we come to a point in time where the Mafias are probably one of the most popular things in ERLC. This is a phenomenal update. I can't say enough about it. I think this is one of the updates I've probably made the most videos around. I personally love this update. Let me know what your thoughts are for the 5 most used and not used items or locations in ERLC. Let me know if you guys want to see a part 2. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, long live the Zanies.